Welcome to History Date Night, a World War II podcast covering the Second World War in chronological order, from the opening shots to final victory. I'm Justin, and joining me is my wife and co-host, Jenny. Together we explore the people, battles, and turning points that shape the deadliest conflict in human history, one date at a time. On this episode, widespread fires burning simultaneously across the capital.
And he is already planning the next war.
Bomb misses by about 100 feet.
Its armies have surrendered.
Welcome back to History Date Night. I'm Justin. Last episode we covered September 20th through the 23rd. The collapse of Poland's southern armies, the meeting in Berlin where Reinhard Heydrich sketched the organizational blueprint for the Holocaust, Roosevelt asking Congress to unlock American arms sales, and Warsaw still holding on in conditions that were beyond what most of us can imagine. We ended with the last cavalry battle, Freud dying in London, and the radios being taken from Jewish households in Germany. This episode, Warsaw Falls.
I'm Jenny. This is an episode we've both been anticipating and dreading since we started the series. Warsaw's story across September 1939 is one of the most remarkable things I've read about this war. The stubbornness of that defense, the cost to the people inside the city, and the way it ends. We're going to spend some time on Warsaw, but there's also a lot happening elsewhere this week. The Ark Royal is nearly sunk again, and then dramatically unsunk. Hitler tells his generals to start planning the invasion of France. The Gestapo and the Soviet secret police sit down together for a meeting, and the world keeps turning in strange ways. Let's get into it.
September 24th, Sunday. Warsaw has now been under siege for over 3 weeks. On this day, the Luftwaffe launches its largest and most concentrated bombardment of the city yet. The notes describe entire streets being reduced to rubble and widespread fires burning simultaneously across the capital. The British government formally protests, calling the bombing a breach of Germany's pledge at the start of the war to refrain from indiscriminate attacks. Germany does not respond to this protest.
And on September 25th, Hitler arrives in person outside Warsaw to observe the attack. On the same day, he issues Directive No. 4, formally ordering a swift end to the Polish campaign, and buried within it a set of instructions that tell you exactly where his mind already is. He orders that once Warsaw and the fortress town of Modlin, which is about 20 miles north of the capital, are taken, German forces should begin preparations for rapid occupation of Lithuania. He wants the option to attack in the west kept open at any moment. Poland isn't even finished, and he is already planning the next war.
General Halder, the German Army Chief of Staff, the man who runs the day-to-day planning of the Wehrmacht, notes in his diary on September 25th that he believes that Hitler is ready to plan a war with France and Britain. That diary entry will prove accurate. Within 2 days, Hitler will formally order his generals to begin planning an attack on France, with a target date of November 12th, less than 7 weeks away. His generals will tell him this is impossible. They are right, and the date will slip, but the intent is already there, even as Warsaw burns.
Inside Warsaw, the situation by September 25th is almost beyond description. The water supply has been cut off for days. The city's sewers are destroyed. There is almost no food and almost no medicine. The German Air Command has been dropping incendiary bombs on Warsaw indiscriminately. Junkers Ju-52 transport planes, the 3-engine workhouse used to carry German paratroopers, are flying over the city and dropping incendiary bombs throughout the city to cause fires and chaos among the defenders. In some exaggerated reports, crew members of these bombers are shoveling incendiary bombs out of the side cargo doors with coal shovels. Regardless if that is true or not, that's the level of contempt being shown for the people of Warsaw. German army generals are actually furious about the bombing, not for humanitarian reasons, but because the resulting smoke and fires are obscuring the targets their artillery has been carefully aiming at.
The German communiques have insisted throughout the siege that their bombardments have been directed at military targets only. The list of targets hit includes the Church of the Savior, the Ujazdów, Red Cross Hospital, with the Red Cross clearly marked on its roof, and St. John's Cathedral, struck during Mass. The city hall is in ruins. An estimated 40,000 civilians have been killed or wounded. The once beautiful Polish capital is, in the words of one correspondent, a burning wreck with not one building intact.
And yet Warsaw has not fallen. Right to the end, the Germans have had almost no success actually penetrating the city. Their tanks have been stopped cold by permanent fortifications and anti-tank obstacles dug by the city's own citizens. Polish soldiers have kept the German infantry at bay. The garrison's commanders understand clearly that if it came to street-by-street fighting, the Germans would suffer catastrophic casualties. That's exactly why Germany chose to bomb and shell the city into submission rather than storm it. Warsaw could not be taken by force. It could only be destroyed.
While Warsaw is enduring its final days, something is happening out at sea that becomes one of the odder propaganda episodes of the early war. HMS Ark Royal, the British aircraft carrier that was nearly torpedoed in Episode 3, and that sank the first German U-boat, is operating in the North Sea on September 26th, returning to port in company with 2 battleships, HMS Nelson and HMS Rodney, and a damaged submarine it has been escorting.
3 German Dornier flying boats spot the group. Ark Royal launches 3 Skua fighter bomb aircraft to drive them off, and in doing so scores one of, if not the first, British air-to-air kill of the war. One of the Dorniers is shot down, but the other 2 escape, and the commander aboard Ark Royal knows exactly what that means. Those pilots are going to report the carrier's position.
He's right. 4 German Junkers Ju-88 bombers arrive shortly after. 3 are driven away by anti-aircraft fire, but the 4th drops a 1,000-kilogram bomb. That's just over 2,200-pound bomb, directly at the carrier. Ark Royal turns hard to starboard, heeling over, and the bomb misses by about 100 feet, exploding in the ocean off her bow and sending a waterspout over the ship. The German pilots, through the smoke and spray, cannot tell whether they hit her, and they report a probable sinking.
Germany officially claims the Ark Royal has been sunk. The British Admiralty, seeing the propaganda value in letting Germany believe this, simply does not deny it. For a period of days, the German public believes Britain's most famous aircraft carrier is at the bottom of the North Sea. Churchill even plays along, publicly stating that he is puzzled by Germany's confidence. The Ark Royal is still fighting. She will be famously sunk by Germany several more times before she is actually sunk, in November 1941. For now, she sails home.
September 27th, Wednesday. At 2 p.m, General Julius Rommel, commander of the Warsaw garrison, and no relation to the famous German general of the same surname, surrenders 140,000 troops to the German 8th Army. Warsaw has endured 27 days of aerial bombing and 19 days of artillery shelling. 16,000 of the garrison have been wounded. An estimated 40,000 civilians are dead or injured. The water supply has been cut off for 5 days. A typhoid outbreak is considered imminent due to the destroyed sewer system of the city.
German General von Blaskowitz, who receives the Polish surrender, allows the Polish officers to keep their swords. He promises that the soldiers will go into captivity only for as long as it takes to, in his words, dispose of the necessary formalities. The terms provide for immediate care of civilians and treatments of the wounded. These are the terms. What actually happens to Polish prisoners under German occupation will be a different story, and we will come back to it.
Warsaw held for 27 days. To put that in perspective, France, with one of the largest armies in Europe, and the supposedly impregnable Maginot Line, will hold for 46 days when Germany attacks in 1940. A besieged city with a garrison that was never meant to be a primary fighting force, with its civilians shoveling sand onto incendiary bombs and standing in shell fire to wait for water, held for more than half as long as an entire nation would. That is a testament to Warsaw and her populace.
The fortress of Modlin, about 20 miles north of Warsaw, where the Vistula and Narew rivers meet, sits at a major river junction, the kind of naturally defensible position armies have fought over for centuries. Surrenders the following day, September 28th. General Victor Thom hands over 24,000 troops, 4,000 of them wounded, to the German 3rd and 8th Armies. Fighting continues in a few isolated pockets around the country, but the Polish campaign is effectively over.
What Hitler does in the hours after Warsaw's surrender tells you a lot about how he thinks. On the evening of September 27th, the same day that the city capitulates, he summons his senior military commanders and formally orders them to begin planning an offensive against France and the Low Countries, which are Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, with a target date of November 12th. His generals are appalled. They tell him it cannot be done that quickly, and the army needs time to regroup after Poland. The autumn weather in France makes armored operations nearly impossible. Hitler overrules them. The attack will be planned for November regardless.
Also, on September 27th, the Reich Security Main Office is formally established in Berlin under Reinhard Heydrich. In German, it's the Reichssicherheitshauptamt. You don't need to remember that, but it's usually abbreviated RSHA. This is the bureaucratic umbrella that brings together under one roof the Gestapo, the Criminal Police, and the Security Service, or SS. Every instrument of Nazi terror, now coordinated through a single chain of command.
And on that same day, September 27th, representatives of the German Gestapo and the Soviet NKVD, the Soviet secret police, meet once again at Brest-Litovsk, the city on the Bug River in eastern Poland that we've mentioned numerous times, right on the agreed demarcation line between the German and Soviet zones. They are there to coordinate the suppression of Polish resistance. The two secret police forces of the two powers that just destroyed Poland are now sitting down together to plan how to keep it subjugated. 90 miles to the northwest, the city that they spent a month bombing is still smoldering.
Also, on September 27th, and this is a thread that will become enormously important, the first organized Polish resistant movement is formally established. It's called the Service for Poland's Victory. It's the seed from which the Polish Home Army, the Armia Krajowa, eventually one of the largest resistance movements in occupied Europe, will grow. Poland's government has fled. Its armies have surrendered. Its capital is in ruins. And on the day Warsaw falls, Poles begin organizing to fight back. They will not stop for the rest of the war.
That same day, the Polish government in exile is also coming together in Paris. Many of Poland's legitimate government ended up in a Romanian internment camp, but those who didn't begin reconstituting itself in the French capital. It will move to London when France falls. It will govern in exile for the entire war, representing Polish sovereignty and coordinating Polish forces fighting under Allied command. The Polish state does not end on September 27, 1939. It relocates.
September 28th brings the bureaucratic aftermath. Germany and the Soviet Union sign the German-Soviet Frontier Treaty in Moscow. Ribbentrop, Germany's foreign minister, travels there himself, redrawing the agreed borders of their respective spheres. Stalin takes Lithuania, which had previously been in the German sphere. Germany gets additional territory in central Poland around Warsaw. Poland is divided, formally and on paper, between two empires. The country that existed on September 1st is gone.
On the same day, in Estonia, the small Baltic nation just south of Finland, roughly the size of New Hampshire and Vermont combined, sitting on the eastern shore of the Baltic Sea, is forced to sign a so-called Mutual Assistance Treaty with the Soviet Union. Under its terms, the Red Army and Navy received the right to establish bases on Estonian soil. The Soviet Union solemnly promises not to interfere in Estonia's internal affairs. This promise will last approximately 9 months. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania will all be absorbed into the Soviet Union by mid-1940. That's a spoiler, but it's also a future episode.
Ribbentrop's trip to Moscow has also a propaganda dimension. Germany and the Soviet Union issue a joint statement offering peace to Britain and France, calling for an end to the war now that Poland has been settled. Both governments know perfectly well that Britain and France will reject this. The point isn't to make peace. The point is to be seen offering peace, so that when Britain and France decline, Germany can frame themselves as the aggressors who chose to continue the war. It is transparent, and it works anyway in certain quarters.
Back in the United States, something happens quietly on September 26 that is going to matter in a part of the world we haven't focused on much yet. President Roosevelt bans the export of scrap iron and steel from the United States to any country outside the Western Hemisphere, with the exception of Britain. Japan is the obvious target. Japanese industry has been dependent on American scrap metal to fuel its war machine in China. Japan's government declares the policy an unfriendly act. This is the first meaningful American economic pressure on Japan, and it begins a spiral of escalation that will run for 2 more years. We'll be tracking that thread as this podcast continues.
And on September 28th, the Cincinnati Reds clinched the National League pennant with a 5-3 win over the St. Louis Cardinals. The Reds haven't won the pennant since 1919, the year of the infamous Black Sox scandal. 20 years of waiting, ending on the same day Warsaw surrenders and Estonia loses its independence. The sports pages and the front pages have never felt further apart.
So where are we? Warsaw has fallen after 27 days. The fortress of Modlin is gone. Poland's formal military resistance is over. Germany and the Soviet Union have signed the paperwork dividing the country between them. Estonia has been forced to accept Soviet military bases. Hitler has ordered his generals to plan the invasion of France for November. The RSHA is operational under Heydrich. The Gestapo and the NKVD have held their first coordination meeting, and in a building somewhere in Warsaw, the first members of the Polish resistance movement are beginning to organize.
Next episode, we step back from Poland. Poland will recede from the headlines for a while, though not from the suffering. And look at what the rest of the world is doing as September turns to October. The Western Front is going quiet in what people are starting to call the phony war. Britain and France are in a strange suspended state, at war but not fighting. America is debating whether to sell weapons. Japan is watching, and Germany is building. Well, that's all for tonight. Justin, what are your main takeaways?
So my main takeaway and thing that I want to highlight and put more in casual words is just the resistance and the defense of Warsaw and how impressive it is. That's something that you can't really compare to other European cities yet, as we haven't really gotten there. But so many of the cities that Germany takes are open, or are what we call open cities, meaning that they declare the city, they won't defend the city. The enemy can take it right away. But Poland's choice to resist cost Warsaw greatly. But I actually think that that's such a huge commitment, like such a source of national pride. Like this city, this beautiful city, they're going to defend it to the death, come hell or high water. And so really to me, I think that is such impressive that it was able to hold out that long.
All right, well, thanks for joining us for episode 6 of History Date Night. We'll see you next time.
See you then.